Hey, welcome to the latest edition of First Aid Copites podcast. This week, we are delighted to be joined by Timuchin, who is the founder of American Scouser. And probably if you're watching this, you've heard about American Scouser if you're not very familiar with it. Just a reminder, this is a podcast for Liverpool fans in Delaware and friends of Liverpool fans in Delaware, wherever you are in the world. Subscribe on whatever podcast platform you're on. We're on Apple Podcasts, which is I find really cool because it tells you what season we're in and what episode we're on. Anyway, we're in season 2 here, and this is episode 32. As soon as the season ends, we're going to get into season 3. Anyway, that's for the future. Okay, so we're going to spend the first part of the show talking about American Scouser, its origins, kind of what it's up to, what kind of things are in its content, because you do a podcast, you have a website. There's probably more than that I don't even know that hopefully we'll learn. And then we'll do a debrief on, since our last podcast, we played 3 games. It was very up, very down, and kind of a bit of both yesterday when we played Villa, because we're recording this on April 11th, the day after Liverpool beat Aston Villa 2-1 with a wonderful last-minute finish from Trent. Okay, before we get to that, we'll also probably touch on Real, the game coming up this week, and what our expectations are. But Timuchin, thanks for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with what are the origins of American Scouser? Where did you kind of come up with the idea, and what were you intending to achieve when you started the whole thing?
Yeah, it's like a mad scientist experiment that was. But yeah, I'm originally from actually Turkey. Grew up, like a Fenerbahce fan, born and raised in Istanbul. Then I spent 2 years in college in London, then came over here, met my wife, ended up staying here. And I've been in the US for like over 20 years now, but actually even more, 25 years. But the reason I tell that story is, anybody who's been a soccer, football, whatever you're going to call it, fan in the US knows it was a lot tougher in the past to be able to follow the sport and, watch games and still be involved and things like that. And over time, obviously, it got easier. And this is partially my fault as well, but I almost felt it was almost like hard to find fans around you that you can kind of share it with, because it is different. Anybody from Europe knows it is just kind of like a different passion. I explain to people here that I meet when they say, man, soccer fans are crazy. And yeah, it's almost like, football, baseball, basketball, hockey, you combine them all into one, and that's what you get. And that's why it's, there's so much passion there. So it kind of started because I kept, I finally found a couple of Facebook groups. And even though I was in Chicago all this time, I didn't even realize there was a supporters club and stuff like that. That's probably more on me and my ignorance and not really researching it using technology and stuff. But I kept seeing posts like, people saying, oh, I'm here. Where can I watch the game? I live here. Are there any other fans? It's almost like screaming into Facebook and hopefully somebody responds kind of thing. And I was like, man, it would be nice to have like a resource for fans of Liverpool to go to in the US. The original goal was just really that, almost like a gathering ground. So that's kind of like how the concept started in my head. And I kind of like met a couple other people that was like, yeah, that is a good idea. We should do that. So the biggest thing we did initially was the map on the website, where you can kind of, based on where you're in the US, you can kind of like go to the city and find out exactly where Liverpool fans watch the game, the bar and stuff like that. And then I kind of like found out more about the supporter clubs and stuff like that. So I was like, man, we should get more involved. They have events. People don't even know about them. Like I say, I'm a big soccer fan, kind of like a sports junkie. Our entire family is, my girls play. That's how I met my wife in college. She's a soccer player. So I wanted to kind of like create something that would be like a good resource. And then it kind of like really evolved from there.
That's cool. Actually, I'm going to take a couple of detail questions. And Sean, if you have anything that you want to ask, then feel free. But Istanbul, that's a kind of famous sort of thing in our history. So I guess I'm assuming you weren't in Istanbul in 2005.
Yeah, you would hope. But see, first of all, I guess kind of like too young to make it there. Of all people, here's the irony. Of all people who went to the game, and I think I was like sick that day too, if I remember, because I remember like literally being miserable watching the game. The game was the only good thing in that day, probably for me. Of all people who went to the game, it was my brother, the black sheep of the family, who's a Manchester United fan.
Oh no.
But I mean, the funny thing too is, I tell that story to people because he came and he was just amazed, impressed, and he was like, "Hey, man, all credit to them; they deserved it." And he really was impressed with the fans at that stadium being 3 down. When you live in Istanbul, you see a lot of crazy stuff in soccer games. That's kind of like part of the culture. kind of comes with the package. He was so impressed with how the fans just kept going, whereas most fans would have maybe turned on their team or would be 2 down to even cheer and stuff like that. I remember him just coming home and saying like, "Man, that was amazing," and just kind of like rubbed it in that I missed it. But both age and sickness, I kind of like missed out on that occasion. Figures, right?
So if I let's kind of move forward, move backwards a bit. How did you? So how did Liverpool become your team, and your black sheep of brother become a Man United fan?
Who knows what brothers do? I don't know how the hell he ended up that way, but I mean, for me, growing up, like in Turkey, you had, I mean, now there's bazillion channels, but like you had like one channel that maybe was to like the government channel. You don't get a lot of soccer to watch. It was only like, the big European games and things like that. I mean, my first memory is 1984 game. And I watched it, and you're as a kid watching where people are doing his like spaghetti legs and stuff, and I was like, "Man, this thing is so cool! Like, this is like unbelievable, Like just watching that entire game, that entire experiment. That's like my first vivid memory. And after that, I started looking into it more and more and more, and tried to follow it. Like anytime they were on, I was trying to like watch that and stuff like that, because really it was kind of an occasion to be able to find it. There's no internet, no streaming, anything like that. It's probably revealing our age over and over again here, but
we do that all the time, don't we?
So yeah, that's kind of like how it all started. And obviously, as I learned more, and that's kind of like one of the other reasons actually I started this site. I feel like it's a club that initially, for me, for example, as a kid, you kind of like see it's cool, you like it, but then as you find out more about the club, it's very easy to fall in love with the club, in terms of its like ethics, in terms of its what it stands for and things like that. The city, I think it's a club that you can just start from zero. I mean, you're a fan in the US, you're trying to pick a team, you're like, hey, those guys, and then you might be what some people might call initially like a bandwagon fan. But I feel like, and everybody starts somewhere, right? We always started somewhere. Unless you were born there, everybody started somewhere supporting a team. Even when you were born, you were probably injected with the DNA with the family. But aside from that, we all start somewhere. I feel like if you start and really find out more about the club, you're going to be a lifelong fan, not just a fan that was a fan of the club because, they had a good run, they had a good team or something like that, but, supported throughout.
Yeah. Yeah. My experience is definitely different, but if you've heard previous shows, then you'll know that half of my family were Evertonians. So there were definitely trapdoors that I could have fallen into. So it feels like we've been doing a really good job this year of trying to throw people off the bandwagon with some of the performances, but we'll get to some of that later. So we before we started, we talked about because I know there will be people I know who'll be like, why are these guys calling themselves Scousers? They're not from Liverpool. So tell us the story about that. So
when we were trying to come up with names, I mean, obviously I knew what it was. I lived in, like England for 2 years. And, if you're a Liverpool fan, you know what the word means and what it stands for, stuff like that. So when I was trying to come up with a name, I don't know, I just didn't want something too generic, I guess. Like we threw out names like, American Cup or something like that, or like Liverpool USA, things like that. We were like throwing around names of like 3-4 people. And I always had this to the back of my head. I don't know why. And honestly, initially, I did not think it would be such a sore spot with certain people. Like I didn't realize people were getting almost like semi-offended. They were not taking it as almost like a compliment, or I think it's the pride of being a Scouser that comes from. That people were like, hey, you're not part of the club here just because you like the team. So we kind of started the name, and I'll be honest, like initially having dealt with that, I haven't considered. I mean, the site has been around for 3 years now. This last year is where we really got it going, but at one point I was like, do we change the name because people are not understanding, or I just wanted something initially that only people who are Liverpool fans would know. Yeah. And that's how the American Scouser name came up. And it wasn't being about, I mean, we obviously know, heck, I'm freaking Turkish. So I'm not even close. I'm not even American. I'm neither one of those things. So it was more about having, being an honorary Scouser, if you will, living in the US. We actually have one of our writers, we're about to publish that piece sometime this month, explaining, how the name came about and, like what it actually means. Because I know, like you mentioned it before the podcast, and I was really glad you mentioned it because it is a sore spot. Sometimes people think of it as, oh, we're just stealing a name. We don't even know what it means. But that was kind of like really the point behind it in some ways. We know what it means, and we wanted almost people to ask. If they didn't know, they were like, what is the Scouser thing that you speak of? And that's what I really wanted in some ways. So I can be like, aha, here, I got something for you. And then, we can kind of like teach you more about the club and what it is. Because I think, especially US fans, because the way the sports are situated here is so different than Europe. I mean, some good, some bad. You can kind of like evaluate it either way. But I think it's kind of like a very new and odd concept of how European sports works compared to here, where, I mean, like if I told you, hey, yeah, Liverpool is packing up their bags tonight and they're moving to London, you'd be like, what the hell are you even talking about? So, I mean, there are like unique concepts like that don't translate. So I almost like we wanted something that would bring people to say, what is this? So we can kind of teach about the club.
Yeah. So much to unpack there about the English psyche. I like the honorary Scouser, but one other thing we touched on, I did have a conversation at one point with Gareth Roberts of the Anfield Rap, where he was telling me how, because he comes from Huyton, which is sort of outside the city limits technically, that people were telling him he's not really a Scouser, which is kind of funny because that would mean Steven Gerrard wasn't either. But so there are some people who definitely got views about, but I'm fine with the honorary Scouser. I think that's totally fine in my world. But I'm sure there'll be people who would disagree. So Sean, what questions do you have? I've got a couple more.
Just wanted to ask you, if you could describe kind of everything that's involved with the group. I know, like Paul mentioned, podcast and so just kind of curious what else is sort of involved, like on the website, and what else you guys do.
Yeah, it's been evolving, I should say, as well. I mean, initial goal, like I say, was to provide a resource. So I want to kind of keep going with that as much as possible. So we do have some writers actually who are either from Liverpool. Actually, some of them are just in the UK, but originally were from Liverpool. That will have like some more like historical pieces, so we can have that as like like a reference as well. And then we have a lot of like new writers actually that just joined in. So that the ultimate goal is to have a site that I think like produces just unique content, and not just, I know you see a lot of sites, a lot of fan sites that just will throw anything out there just to get clicks or whatever is popular. I mean, if we wanted to, we could do a continual post every day. And then you would get all the clicks and the comments you would want in the world, and it would just bore you to death. At least bore me to death. But the ultimate goal is be able to like produce original content. We have a lot of unique writers that some of them are focused on stats, some of them on the tactical side of things. So we kind of like wanted to make it, I don't want to say intelligence, as it would be insulting to the other sides, but if you know what I mean, it's more advanced, I guess, in terms of the content we produce. And we do have the podcast. We've been doing it for a while. It has kind of like evolved over the years as well. We tried the video format. We're not as brave as you guys are over here, so it wasn't like a video. So your ratings are gonna plummet. I thought this was really gutsy to put me on video, but instead of
assume we have ratings.
Yeah, I'm not sure we. We rely on audio too. So
yeah, so almost all the people we get now are on audio. So I was going to reference the fact that I've got the Rome shirt that you made, the '84 game you mentioned, but that doesn't come across well on audio.
Paul's array of Liverpool kits and how they're associated with the episode is usually one of my favorite parts of doing it on camera, honestly.
Video content is tricky. I feel like video content is tricky. I know everybody wants video content for the most part, but it is tricky. It's a different audience. It's something, as we grow, we're getting people who are joining us, and we're kind of like trying to utilize everybody's interest and expertise. So, you get somebody who's in graphic design. Actually, we have our store that we're actually kind of revamping right now to be able to have unique designs and stuff like that. So we kind of want to keep growing the sites. We just hit 2,000 followers on Facebook. So we have another giveaway for that. So we've been doing a lot more giveaways and stuff. The goal is kind of to get more and more people involved. And I want to get more information on the supporters clubs. We've been doing podcasts. Hopefully we'll get to do with Delaware as well. Almost talking about the story of how the supporter clubs that came about. Every city is different. Every one of them is a unique story. They're somehow similar, but they're unique. So kind of find out more about those, because I feel like if we present the supporter clubs to people in a city, especially in bigger cities, it kind of can be intimidating in some ways to just a man walks into a bar kind of scenario. So, knowing what you're walking into, seeing the environment and stuff like that, I feel like, especially to a person like me, it kind of opens the door. If I see all these pictures, we post pictures from the supporter clubs and, about their story, what they do, how often they meet and things like that. I think knowing that information will people hopefully go to these sport clubs, watch the games with other people, and then obviously increase membership and things like that. And ideally increase fans. Let's face it, the more fans we have, obviously it's better for the club, but it's better for us too. The more people you can connect with and everything like that.
For sure. I haven't checked whether we're on your website, actually. We should probably go look at that.
I think we only have you guys as probably a meeting location.
Okay.
Not a specific page. Basically, we've been doing a specific page for every sports club. Once we record an interview podcast.
Oh, okay.
So we can put up their pictures, social media accounts and stuff like that. And I know it sounds basic, because if somebody really wanted to, they could probably find it. But I just know from my personal experience, even though I was interested, and I would have been very interested to be involved in, I never looked it up, and I'm sure there are other people like that. So being able to have this out there all the time, I think it will help.
Yeah. So I know some of the stuff is on the Liverpool site, but that isn't necessarily the easiest to navigate, because you've got to know the name of the supporters club, and sometimes they're not called. I think of an example. Well, I mean, we're Delaware. Delaware's it might be a small state, but it's still 200, 100 miles, 150 miles long or something. So, it's not very helpful if you're 150 miles away. Any more questions, Sean? I was going to ask about Jeff's piece where he told Scousers to lose the attitude, which I thought was a very dangerous place to go.
I know. I love Jeff. The thing I love about Jeff is he's actually part of the Boston group. And he's very new. He's very new to the sports. We've done some episodes, he's done some pieces, I should say, where he asks questions that are pops in his head as a new fan. And that's why I really love it. And I actually, when he was asking for an idea, I was like, why don't you write something about how it is to be a newer fan that's seeing the losing parts, and not a team that's constantly winning every game. And I was like, how it feels for somebody like that. Because, if you go into these Facebook groups, and obviously I'm in a lot of them with the supporter clubs and stuff like that, and because of our page, there's, when we had the bad run, everybody was like, well, at least it wasn't as bad as the Hodgson years. Or, oh, you're complaining because you haven't seen it worse and stuff like that. And I was like, I mean, it's not only people, just because you've seen it worse doesn't mean you're going to be happy with losses. It doesn't make them any better. And I thought, it would be interesting because everybody kind of generalize and assume that it's only the newer fans that have a problem with this. But that was, far from the truth. So I actually asked Jeff to write something about that. And yes, it got a lot of reaction, positive and negative. I think some people understood. I think when you just looked at the title, you were like, what? Who do you think you're talking to? But once you click and read it, I think it kind of explains a lot better in terms of like, there's still a lot to enjoy despite the final score kind of thing.
I think he hit some great points, and I think we've tried to hit on those in previous episodes that we've done, which is, this team is quite special, and we hope they win more things, but the joy they've brought in the last couple of years has been spectacular. The thing I really had an issue with was he talked about like enjoying Harry Kane. That's not a thing we support on this.
I know. I read that, and I chuckled when I read that. I'm like, only Jeff will write that. And that's mainly, and I think that's someone who, I mean, I'm a soccer junkie, and as you become a longer fan, I realize, and you build a much more bigger hatred for the opposing teams and therefore the players. Whereas when you're newer to the sports, I mean, like for somebody who came to the US and didn't know anything about American football, I'm long story, but I ended up being a 49ers fan. And initially you're like, hey, it's football, I'm just like watching it. And then you're like, man, I can't stand the Seattle Seahawks, and I just don't know why. It eventually just builds into your system. So I think that's something that he'll eventually learn. That's why we call him Scouser in training. I think it's part of his training.
Yes, that sounds good. Yeah, there's lots of parallels there because obviously we're really near Philadelphia. So one of the things that I will often say, and other people have heard say this, is that it's really easy to understand Manchester United if you think about the Dallas Cowboys. Yeah, it's like overinflated opinion of who they are and where they stand in. Anyway, sorry. What? I don't know if you got another question, Sean, but so it sounds like the website is the main vehicle, and the podcast and the writing is just an outcropping of the website. Is that have I got that right?
Correct. I mean, the website is probably the most content because it has all those resources. Our Facebook page is probably the best place to follow, so that you can see the new posts coming up. I'm actually working on something that I've been working on for a while. Well, I'll spill the beans over here, I guess, but it is actually on the website right now. I'm kind of like trying to tweak it a bit more. If you go to the website and click on like LFC News, trying to form something where it would take the top news of, anything Liverpool related from only like reliable sources, whether it's the club, BBC and stuff like that, so that you have one place to go to. And eventually we'll have that on the websites as well as the Facebook page every day, so that it is kind of like we get the news last over here, right? So, I mean, I don't know, maybe you guys might have some inside sources, but you wake up in the morning, stuff has already happened. So you're like kind of finding out the news afterwards. I trying to create like a link where you kind of like go to one location and get multiple news sources giving actually, reputable news.
Before we move on, I need to make a suggestion. You should just hire Sean, because every day on whatever group we're on, he's posting something that I'm like, oh, I didn't know about that.
It's hard to know sometimes what's nonsense and what's not. Sometimes I like to share stories that I know are at least partially nonsense to get people riled up. And other days I'm busy and I can't do that. So
that's when you give us the answer, right?
Yeah, like the Koulibaly rumors. No, and I did check while we're on here. We are on the map. Catherine Rooney's is on the map. So
good stuff. And actually, if you're in Delaware and you can listen to this, we're hoping to kind of watch at least some of the games at the end of the season at Catherine Rooney's in a bigger group once people have been vaccinated and in the open space. Anyway, more on that in a future episode. Okay, so thanks for sharing all that. That's really awesome. I feel really have a much better sense now, and apologize to Jeff if he's listening. But
I think he'd be actually happy to hear that, because that's kind of like the goal, I think. But yeah, I mean, I thank you for the opportunity. I mean, the biggest thing has been being able to spread the word. But as we get more contributors, I mean, we have like, David Jennings, we just published his first piece. We have like Daniel Keenan, Scott Michael, they're like newer writers that are coming up. But yeah, we're always looking for new contributors. I mean, we have a Discord channel, we chat in, but there are people who just write that are like writers. I mean, it's kind of like fun for us. It's just, we're talking Liverpool, and having fun. So it's always like a good time. It's positive. We just, just trying to keep like a positive atmosphere overall. So
So we'll put the link on the episode, but it's www.americanscouser.com, right?
Correct.
Okay. And if you can't spell Scouser, you don't belong, right?
That's the trick. That's the trick. There you go.
Okay. So let's pivot towards, so there were 3 games since we last recorded. We had a 3-0 win at Arsenal, which kind of felt like, we're back, baby. And then we had a bit of a reverse at Real Madrid, which I think we probably want to touch on. And then we had a win that probably would have been commonplace in 2019-20, a last-minute winner after us being 1-0 down. I think we did that a couple of times to Villa in that season. Let's start with, let's go back to Arsenal, actually. I kind of feel like, I'll start with you, Timuchin, your perspective on that game. It feels like in the light of the Madrid game, it feels like that result feels a bit devalued now because, well, Arsenal aren't that good. And, we struggled a bit to score a goal. And apparently it was our biggest win, by the way, against Arsenal away since 1893. I did read that somewhere, but anyway.
Wow. Huh.
See, I really thought I never saw it that way. I almost felt like it's kind of highlighted the mistake we made in the Real Madrid game more than anything else to me. I felt like it was showing that the team was slowly gathering that swagger back. And I thought we kind of tinkered unnecessarily in the Madrid game that kind of blew up. It's one of those, I'm sure we'll talk about that game as well. But when we made those changes, it was either going to be genius or a flop. And it turned out to be mostly a flop, especially in the first half. I thought it was a great performance. It kind of like, to me, showed that something is building again. I feel like it's just confidence in this team. You look at the chances we get. I mean, if you look at, we were talking about actually on the last podcast, it was our trivia question, the number of big chances missed, if by Premier League stats. We have 3 players in the top 10 in the league. And that's, you could be happy and say, oh, we're creating chances. But at the same time, it shows, it's just been about finishing. And that's, a lot of that is confidence. These guys did not forget how to score. And I thought the Arsenal game was one more building block. Even, when you come back to this last Villa game, I think it's a kind of like result of those building blocks where it's a team that's going to keep going to win. And I thought Arsenal game kind of showed that. But obviously, we changed a bit too much, I thought, when we went to the Madrid game after that. I was pretty darn happy. I'm sure every fan was, but not only with the score, but overall play and how the players carry themselves, everybody kind of establishing in their positions and things like that.
Yeah. I thought we looked, personal perspective was we looked really solid against Arsenal. And in many ways, the Real Madrid game was a bit of an outlier. I know you had you have opinions on every game, Sean, but let's go back to Arsenal. What was your couple of takeaways from that?
It seems like a long time ago now.
It does.
I guess overall, I thought we played really well, and I agree with Timuchin that we are kind of getting our confidence back. I've felt. I've said this a lot of times. I felt like we look more like the team we were last year since Fabinho's been in the midfield. I just feel like it's given the players kind of all around the pitch just more confidence that we have more of a solid base somehow. Even though he was playing center back and he was doing very well at center back, it just seems like it's given us that sort of base that we had been missing. I think against Arsenal, it was probably a case of they played into our hands a little bit, kind of similar to RB Leipzig. There unfortunately seems to be a formula for playing against us that worked relatively well. It's these teams that sit back and try to hit us on the counterattack with long balls and sort of hit the ball over, our press. And I don't think that Arsenal really did that effectively. But overall, I agree. I think it looked like we were getting our swagger back. I think the more Nat Phillips and Kabak play with each other, they actually look. They're nowhere near the level of Gomez and Van Dijk, but it looks like a center back like a Premier League center back partnership at least. And that I think gives a little bit more confidence. I do think overall, and this is jumping ahead, I think our build-up play is a big problem. You know, from watching those games, I watched the Real Madrid game back the second time, and then I didn't get to see the game yesterday live, but then watching it back, I was kind of looking for the same thing. And um, we've gotten too predictable on the build-up, and I think some of that does have to do with how we play out of the back. Um, so anyway, that's jumping ahead. But no, I mean Arsenal, I thought was great, and um, yeah, I think it was a confidence booster going into Real Madrid. Um, and yeah, you know, I think it was a great performance.
Yeah. So kind of moving on to the Madrid game, something to share actually from Sean Rogers, a friend of ours from the Anfield Rap, talked about how actually both Villa and Arsenal seem to make the mistake of thinking this is the team that showed up against Brighton and I know West Brom and all those other games, and actually they didn't. They kept on going like they had done in some of the games against like West Ham and Tottenham. So even like we conceded the goal against Villa, which is obviously moving ahead, that they kept playing as if they believed they were going to score. Whereas what had happened, so I think there's definitely two versions of we're slow and we keep moving it around and we don't look like we're going to score. I think there's a version of that which is actually I believe we are going to score and there's something more to the way that we're playing. We'll dive into that more, but with Timuchin, let's talk about the Madrid game. Have we blown it?
I think we have. We had a team that was just as bad as us in terms of injuries, missing their top center backs. And I thought, like Sean was saying, we're building something. Winners are coming back to back. You're building that confidence. Let's face it, that team is not as good up front, and their defensive line is not as good, and the strength is midfield. They have like 3 world-class midfielders in midfield. That was the strength. So for us to kind of roll the dice and let's see what happens in midfield by putting Kate out there, I thought was just a terrible move. For someone who, I mean, we all want Keita to succeed. Let's face it. I mean, in terms of fans' minds, because we've seen what he's done in Germany, and I think we waited for him so long to come because he was signed, he played there and stuff like that. We all want him to succeed, but I feel like obviously with injuries and stuff, he's never really had it going. And just for a guy who hasn't played in a while, especially 90 minutes or hasn't started for a while, just throw him in that big game. The only competition you're in terms of being able to get a trophy and a golden opportunity. I thought. I mean, you're at Madrid and you look at your next round possible matchup. Without you don't want to peek ahead, but knowing your path to the final is not that as challenging as the other side. I thought we blew it by kind of like tinkering too much. I know it's one of those moves where if Keita creates something or scores, Klopp looks like a genius. But I thought it was harsh on Keita to be taken out in the 42nd minute.
Yeah.
Because it wasn't his mistake. And for him to be taken out, I think we could have suffered another 3 minutes through that first half, right? And then taken him at halftime and make adjustments and stuff like that. I thought it was unfair on him. And yeah, I think you're right. You perfectly put. I thought we blew a golden opportunity to be able to. We could have controlled that game, played defensive. It's the away leg. And on the counter, we were going to hit them, I thought, easily. It was going to be kind of like what Sean is talking. I thought it was going to be the Leipzig game all over again. And we could have actually won at Madrid with a couple of away goals and stuff like that on the counter. But we kind of blew it while they almost teased us. I felt like, hey, we don't have any center backs. You guys should really play attacking. And then we kind of fell into it.
So I really want to build on that whole notion of we should. So I've seen Real Madrid play twice this season now. I saw them play against us, and then I saw them play against Barcelona. And it turns out they're like Manchester United in disguise with their they sit really, really deep. and I'm assuming Klopp watched this and then thought, okay, well, Keita's like a bag of tricks that's going to create opportunities that would make them uncomfortable. And obviously he didn't. But I do. That's the biggest thing that concerns me actually about the second leg, which is they become a really defensive team with this very fast guy who's not a bad player, and then they'll kind of land a few on Benzema's head. or foot, and they'll win games. So I think they had 33% possession against Barcelona yesterday, and Barcelona hit the post and hit the bar. Probably should have had a penalty. Yeah, I don't think Barcelona are great, but Real Madrid basically stole it in a way that was even more obvious than the game we played against them. Where am I going with this? Sean, I don't know if you saw the Barcelona game, but your perspective on the Real Madrid tie, because I know you did watch it more than I did. You watched it back, right?
Yeah. Well, the first time I watched it, I watched it on like a Twitter stream. So I wanted to watch it back anyway. And even though it's kind of brutal, I don't know, it wasn't as painful for me to watch, I guess. I don't know why, because of where I'm at emotionally with the season, I guess. My hopes aren't like as high as they were, a couple months ago. But it was really, really interesting to watch back a second time. They kept doing this over and over again, especially in the first half. When they got the ball, they pass it back to their keeper, and their center backs would run all the way back to their box, and they'd pull us all the way deep, and then they'd always stretch it out all the way to the sideline. If you watch it back, their fullbacks are literally standing on the sideline. So it's clear they were trying to stretch us. They were stretching us deep, and they were stretching us wide, and they'd hit it back and forth, and then eventually they'd hit it over the top. I mean, it was clearly their game plan, and it worked. And their midfield, played really well. My sense is that Klopp thought we were going to have an opportunity to press them, and Nabi, that's the best part of his game. He's a great presser, and he leads our press, and he's created tons of chances in the past when he's played that role. They basically didn't allow him to do that because they weren't playing from that space. And then the 2 goals they got, as it turned out, they got it to Cruz, and Nabi had been kind of trying to press, and the 2 times that he didn't press him, Cruz just killed us over the top, and he did it a couple of times. And I agree. It was I kind of feel like Nabi was scapegoated a little bit along with Trent in that game, because when I watched it back, I thought there were a lot of players that were not up to par that day. And to me, Nabi and Trent did not look any worse. And in fact, I thought played better than a number of other players on the pitch that didn't get pulled and didn't get scapegoated. So it was very interesting kind of to watch back. But I got to say, I think Klopp just had a really bad day. He got the tactics wrong. I think Zidane, kind of got the tactics right, and it was just one of those days. A manager can, I love Klopp as much as anyone, but a manager can have a bad day too, and I think he just got it wrong that day. And Zidane's a very good manager, so it can happen. I think it was just one of those, unfortunately.
So if you have access to Michael Cox's zonal marking piece on The Athletic, I don't know if you saw it, Sean.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, it was a very good piece. Yeah, he outlined it.
Yeah. Because I think kind of what he says is like, well, nobody thinks Zidane does any strategy. He just sends people out. And it's like, since he lost Ronaldo and Bale, then actually he's tactically become a lot more astute. And he pointed out a few of the things that you talked about, Sean, in terms of the game. One of the things he did say was, like, Trent was not as bad, to your point, as the highlights might show, because actually, because they kept putting it out wide, Trent was forced to go out and cover Mendy or who it was on that left-hand side, which left the centre-backs more exposed, which is how the first goal got scored.
It was part of their game plan. They were putting Trent into a position to choose between marking Mendy or Vinicius.
Yeah.
And he has, no offense, he has Nat next to him, who's not the fastest player. Right. And Trent was just constantly under pressure. And the second goal where he made the mistake, again, watching it back, he makes a bad mistake. But if you watch it back on replay, it's not as bad as it looks on first watch. He's put in a really tough position, because if he lets the ball go, Asensio's in on goal. And I think it was Mendy on the run would have been in behind him, and it would have been a 2-on-1 against Ali. Yeah. And so he has to make a play on the ball. He could have swung and just kicked it someplace. It looked to me like he tried to head it backwards, kind of behind Kabak, and he just mishit the header. And, it can happen. It's just the thing that's frustrating to me with Trent, which is a whole nother narrative, is like he just gets destroyed when he makes mistakes like that.
Yeah.
And it's very similar to how people, jump all over Salah and Mane about diving. Reece James got destroyed against West Brom the week before, and nobody said anything about it all week. It's unfair, I think, the way that he's treated in the media. But
I almost feel like the fan base sometimes picks people. Hendo's not there, so I guess we'll blame somebody else. Lovren is gone. I mean, we should have just kept him just for this purpose alone, so everybody can just constantly blame him. I mean, I feel like the fan base just finds the situation. They take the goal, they take a picture. If Trent is on the screen, it's his fault. Whereas, I mean, the first goal, let's face it. I mean, like you're saying, it's a center back pairing that's building, but they knew the pace was lacking on Phillips' side.
Yeah.
So all the balls are going there. I mean, they must have. I mean, if you're looking at it and you have a fast left back, fast as a left winger, and you're like, oh, their right center back is slow as heck, it's very easy that it's going to go, everything is going to go that way. But like I say, I feel like we pick certain players can never make mistakes somehow, which they are human, believe it or not. So it is possible. Yeah. I mean, there have been games where, Van Dijk would make a mistake, but Gomez happens to be in the picture at the end, so he would get the blame. So I don't know how that works, but, fans feel better specifying a certain person and just going at them as opposed to saying that entire back line kind of like fails at times. The line is not set right and things like that. But I guess somebody has to get the blame.
Right. It's funny, Sean Rogers had an expression for Gomez about he's often at the scene of the crime, but not necessarily the person who's culpable. But he's talking of of Anfield rap personalities, Neil Atkinson, I noticed in the review show today, suggested he didn't think Phillips would be picked against Real Madrid in the second leg. And I'll just leave that out there and we can let that percolate. But let's say at least a little bit about yesterday's game. Aston Villa, no Mane starting. Jota's played 2 performances now where not necessarily he's looked that great, although 3 goals in 3 for Mo Salah, and obviously a injury time winner which got us all off of our seats from Trent. What do you take away from yesterday to mention?
I don't know. It was one of those games where, I mean, sometimes you watch these games and it's like, is this the same game from 2 months ago? Like, is I pressed the wrong channel, or it looks so identical with chances created not happening, and then that goal happens. And kind of like what Sean was saying, like I'm in that mode too, but just like, I mean, what are you going to do? What can you do? It's just like, it doesn't, I don't even take it as hard anymore. It's just like, I guess it's fate. But yeah, I thought they played well. They created chances. That game could have probably been easily 3-1 at halftime. But like I say, we're just not capitalizing on those chances. And if you don't, I mean, this is the Premier League. You're not playing against weak opposition. They have quality as well. And they're going to get 1 or 2 chances. And it turns out, somehow these teams take care of those chances against us. And I thought they played well the first half. We could have scored. We should have scored. I mean, the one that Mo had 1-on-1, several other chances, but that was probably that one that comes to mind. It was like, last year, you can just go get a drink from the refrigerator because it's going to be a goal. You don't even have to watch it. So, I mean, you knew once he's in that situation, next thing you know is going to be the goal celebration. And then, of course, that goal happened. It was just like a typical 2021 game and then we score, VAR turns it over with lines drawn all over the freaking place, and you were like, there you go, 2021, just another game. But I felt like because of the play, I still had hope for the second half. I thought we're definitely going to get a goal. I just don't know if we're going to be able to get 2 goals and not concede while trying to get goals.
Yeah. A couple of things. The only thing not 2021 about the game was we didn't have any injuries. I resist, which is a rare thing. I do think one of the other things, I don't know if it's your comment that I saw, Sean, I do think when Firmino went off, we actually looked a lot more disjointed. So it was pleasant that we scored the winner, because obviously the Shaqiri on for Kabak is a thing now. that he's going to do multiple occasions, and that made obviously a big difference to our chance creating potential, at least in this one.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, just real quick, it was Villa had a couple brutal injuries in that game. It was kind of like us. It was something that nobody talked about, but that's going to hurt them a lot. I think they lost 3 players.
Well, the one thing I'd say is, like, every time they got injured, they were off the field and they like crawled back on to stop the play.
Yeah. I mean, that was, so I'll just say, like, my experience watching the game was weird because I wasn't able to watch it live, but I was following it on my phone, and I could tell it was just like painful and brutal for everyone watching the game. But then I watched it back and I was like, we actually played pretty well. Like, we created a lot of good chances. Firmino, I thought, had a really good game. Was back to kind of doing his Firmino things, and he should have had a goal. I mean, that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
And the goal we gave up was unfortunate. Ali should have saved it. What are you going to do? But at the end of the day, I think the way the game plays out actually helps us a lot because it's uplifting for us to win a game that way at Anfield, especially for Trent to have the winner. So I came away feeling pretty good. It'll be interesting. It'll be interesting to see who Klopp starts on against Madrid. I think we can come back against them, but it's not a high likelihood. We just have to win 2-0, but Real Madrid are pretty good. They got really good players, and they've won 3 Champions Leagues with this manager. So it's not, they're not a cakewalk.
So you've already pivoted, and I did touch earlier on the fact that they're like really defensive. I mean, they play like United do against good teams. They sit deep, and they've got good, like, fast players and Vinicius. And let's close it out. Final thoughts on Timuchin on the game on Wednesday. What's your hope and what's your expectation?
Oh man, 2 very different things.
Yeah, potentially so. Yeah.
Cautiously optimistic. I know everybody talks about Barcelona and stuff, but the first leg of the Barcelona game was a totally different story. Where we outplayed them and we should have won that game, and somehow, you're like, the score probably should have been reversed. So I don't think it's like the same scenario.
Great.
Having said that, this team does its best when they have 90 minutes of going like full energy cycle to go after, because they have that potential in them.
Yeah.
I really think it's very doable. But I mean, if you guys ever listen to the podcast, I'm the pessimist of the group. I always pick the worst, And I mean, even before the Barcelona game, I was like, let's just go out there and beat them. I don't care what the final score is. Let's just go out there and beat them. I did not think. I know everybody now says, "Oh, I believed all the way," but I don't know. Everybody believes suddenly afterwards. But but my goal was, I was like, let's just go out and beat them, and then if it happens, it happens. I feel like the same way here. Let's just go out there. And if we get an early goal, similar to the Barcelona game, anything is possible. It just really depends on, it's partially luck. I mean, these front 3 converting. I mean, I know it's a lot of parallels with the Barcelona game, so I keep going back to it. But my fear over there was, man, I don't know if we can stop them on the counter. And I realize we don't have like Van Dijk and stuff right now, but that's probably my fear. We'll be able to stop them from scoring. But I mean, you never know. My hope is we do it. But if we do it, I say it's going to be like one of those, like, my scenario is 3-1, and then we beat him 4-1 in over extent.
Okay.
That's my prediction there.
I don't know if my heart will take that, but my head definitely will. I'm going to leave you the last word, Sean. But my take actually is that if we don't concede, I actually would feel pretty good about our chances. Because they're going to give up a lot of space to us, and if we can be the least bit creative, then I think maybe the Shaqiri for Kabak moments will turn in our favor. I'd love a last minute winner in regular time, which again not good for my heart, but wow, how good would that be? Sean, final thoughts. Real Madrid Wednesday.
You mentioned stole what I was going to say with the 3-1 and winning in an extra time, but what I was going to add is that I hope Mo Salah gets the winner, because he deserves it against Real Madrid. Yeah. And he's having a great season. Nobody talks about it enough. He's having an amazing season again, despite how the rest of the team's doing overall. So
yeah,
that'd be great to see.
A much underestimated, for whatever reason, Mo Salah, right?
Yeah.
Hey, Timuchin, thank you so much for joining us. Our expectations are always high, and I think we've exceeded our expectations for today's episode.
I don't know if they were high to start with them, but okay, let's go with that. No, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. Like I listened to you guys before as well, but now I might even start watching the video.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I'll give us 4 viewers.
That's dangerous. Yeah.
Actually, we occasionally have more than that. But so again, if you want to follow Timuchin, it's www.americanscouser.com. I'll leave the link. If you're watching this, it should be in the details on the podcast info. So thanks, Sean, once again.
Thank you. Yep.
Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Timuchin.
Thank you.